Hi, my name is Marla Knoll, and I'm going to be talking about Peter Drucker's book, Management, Tasks, Responsibilities, Practices. In that book, he covers a lot of information. It's 811 pages. I encourage you to read some of Peter Drucker's books on management. He's written over 25 books, 11 of which are on management. And Peter Drucker has been known as the father of management. One thing I'd like to share is that in my years of running businesses, I made a practice of reading 4 business books a year. 4 business books a year. And that really gave me some ideas for my businesses, some understanding about people for my businesses, understanding cause and effect of what was going on in my business. So I encourage you to do the same, to have a practice, a discipline of reading at least one business book a year that will really help you in your growth as a manager and a leader. So what I want to cover is his concept of effective management, where he goes from management to actual leadership. And Peter Drucker, when he gets to page 300, he goes to the concept that people are our greatest assets. For he describes the great leadership that people can use to manage people. And how do they do that? According to Drucker, there are 3 traditional approaches to managing people. And realize I am talking about managing people. I haven't mentioned leadership yet. So the first approach is the welfare approach. The welfare approach. And this is where Drucker states that people are perceived as problems. And he uses an example of a company that used the welfare approach, was successful with the welfare approach for a number of years, but continued to use that approach even though it became ineffective for the organization, where the business eventually went out of business because of the fact that they continued to use this approach. So, not recommended. I encourage you to read this book so that you can see the example that Drucker used. But the welfare approach is really perceiving people as problems. So the second approach is the personnel management approach. And in this approach, we manage people by using policies and procedures and not necessarily any leadership styles. So you're basically firefighting. So you're using policies and procedures, and when people go outside of those policies and procedures, then you use discipline and firefighting to get things back into alignment. The third approach is to consider your people as resources. You consider your people as resources, and you want to build upon the resources and enable the strengths of your people to become the strengths of the organization. In order to do that, Drucker says that you need to do 2 different things. One is to build responsibility and achievement into the job and the workforce. So the first thing is to build responsibility and achievement into the job and the workforce. And then the second thing is the manager must treat the people that they work with as a resource, and then ask 3 questions to each person. Ask 3 questions. The first question: what do I do as your manager, and what does the company do that helps you the most in your job? So the first question is, what do I do as your manager, and what does the company do to help you the most in your job? The second question is, what do I do as your manager, and what does your company do that hinders you the most in your job performance? So what do I do, and then what does the company do that hinders you the most in your job performance? And then 3, what can you do to help me as your manager, do the best job for the company? So what can you do to help me as your manager do the best job for the company? So those are the 3 questions that you should ask all of your employees, and not just one time, right? Not just one time, because things evolve. So maybe every job performance review, you ask those 3 questions and see what you get. And let people have some time to think about their answers. So this is not just I'm going to ask you this question, come up with the answer on the spur of the moment. No, give them the questions in advance so they have time to think about what the best answers are for those 3 questions. Then Drucker says the final most important aspect of managing people is to place them in a role where they are best suited. So place your people in a role where they're the most productive, where you can use the strengths of people to the maximum benefit of the organization. So placing people in the right roles is critically important to managing the strengths of your people. So non-performers should not remain in the organization. Non-performers should not remain in the organization. Now, Drucker uses an exception to the rule, and that's where somebody, maybe older person, has been in the organization for a long time and has earned the company's loyalty. So if somebody has been in the organization a long time, maybe they're not as effective as they used to be, but they have earned the company's loyalty. So listen up, corporate America. Please take that to heart. I know in running a business, I certainly did that for an employee that had been with the business for 20 plus years. I owed that person, a senior management level person, my loyalty or the company's loyalty. I also had a person that was a non-performer. The individual was in accounts receivable and really tried to learn the accounts receivable function and really could not do the job. So we coached the person several times, and then we finally let the person go. A year later, same person came back to see some people in the business and let us know that he had opened his own bakery and was hugely successful and very happy. Now, I could have left that person and kept trying to work with that person in accounts receivable, and he would have been miserable trying to do a job he was not suited for. And instead, we gave him the opportunity to be incredibly successful and happy in a job in a place where he was far more suited. So I think you need to think about that. Are you doing a person a favor by keeping them in a position that they're not suited for? No, you're not at all. So I suggest you look at Peter Drucker's book, take the words to heart about how you can support and build on your people's strengths. I really think that it's an important thing to do, training your people and really focusing on how to build your people. I once had an individual in one of my peer groups talk about how upset they were about all the training and money they'd spent on building up their personnel only to have them leave the business. Another very wise person in that same meeting said, well, what if you hadn't spent all that money on training and developing your people and they stayed? My name is Marla Knoll. I hope you have a chance to read some great business books as you work through your knowledge of management and leadership. And Peter Drucker's books are certainly some that I would recommend. And again, Marla Knoll, Peter Drucker on management, tasks, responsibilities, and practices.